Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Coffee Chats with Coach Candy. Wednesday morning, y'all. Welcome. Grab your coffee, grab your tea, grab your water, grab your juice, grab your milk, grab whatever it is that gets you up and going for a fantastic day. Welcome, everyone. Today's going to be a big discussion. We're going to continue our discussion from yesterday. And we're going to dig in a little bit deeper. It's amazing how, good morning, Herbie. It's amazing how you open up a conversation, right? And I always say, you know, when the teacher is ready, the student appears. And when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And you teach what you need to learn, right? And so it's interesting. Yesterday, we had a huge conversation. Good morning, Deborah. We had a really big, powerful conversation around around labels and their power and whether or not they serve, is there any space that they serve, good morning, and what is the damaging effects of labels. And it's interesting because not long after we had, good morning, Terry, we had the conversation, good morning, Martha, I ran across an article that literally was like a sucker punch. It was like a hit right in my core because it forced me last night to sit in my truth a little bit. And I have to say, this might be a tough morning. It might be a tough Facebook Live. Good morning, Dina. But I wanted to continue the conversation. I wanted to talk about where and how labels can be really damaging. And I think we landed yesterday that there are some spaces where labels, depending on what meaning we're giving words, and things that may help us stay aligned and true in terms of the values we want to emulate, the characteristics, the personality traits, the ways that we can create our due north on our compass and say, this is who I want to be. So words like courageous, generous, authentic, right? When we think about our power words, or we think about those three core words that speak to our standards of integrity. Good morning, everyone. And we also talked about where labels could be really damaging and debilitating, right? We talked about labels that we put on our kids, you know, boys are this, girls are that, things even such as, you know, that person's smart, that person's beautiful, that person's funny. And when we start to qualify people based on the labels that we're giving them, we oftentimes put them in a box, right? We're trying to put them in a box. And, you know, it's human nature. And I'm just kind of reiterating a couple of things we talked about for those of you that are joining today that weren't with us for the conversation yesterday, because I want to jump into the effect this article had on me. And I want to talk about some things from a different perspective. And so, and I posted it last night. Some of you might have read it or seen it. And what I want you to think about is the fact that, good morning, Robin, the idea that when we try to put people in a box, oftentimes it's for our own sense of protection. It's our own sense of control. It's a human nature thing to judge. We make assessments based on, we have programming, we have conditioning that has either been handed down to us through many, many, many generations. And so we get beliefs that oftentimes are handed to us that aren't even ours. And we have programming conditioning that happens based on things that we saw, based on things that we heard, based on things that we experienced growing up as well. And, you know, I've talked about many times that our our conditioning oftentimes has been instilled in us by the ages of 7, 10 when we're children. And so we have a lot of influences, right? We have our parents, we have generational stuff in our family, we have our communities, we have our cultures, we have school, we have church, we have these different influences. I was a military brat, so I have a different perspective than some people that grew up in the same town and have the same friends their whole life. And some of you I know experienced that as well. I traveled the world, and so I had a different view of many cultures. And I mean, I lived in Italy for 4 years. I've lived across the United States. I've been in different regions of the country, and then I did a lot of traveling in my corporate career. I traveled to Singapore, I was in Tokyo, I was in different places. I've been to Canada, Mexico, you know, and there's still spaces where, you know, I feel like my perspective has not been as broad as possible. And so good morning, Shirley, welcome. And so I want to get into this more today. I feel like we really hit on something yesterday, and I want to get into the conversation because, like I said, it's amazing how the teacher gets what she needs when she's going through the lesson as well. And yesterday I came across an article that was entitled, Making Eye Contact with Homeless People is Important. And I saw the title and I'm like, yeah, I totally agree with that. Yes, and then I started to read the article, and I'm just warning you, this might be a tough one for me, because I'm sitting in my truth a little bit this morning, and I have to say I don't like what I see. And so one of the things that showed up in this was the fact that sometimes we don't even know where and how we're being dismissive of other human beings, right? And this isn't a political discussion. This isn't a political discussion around the homeless issue right now. This is about humanity, and are we taking time to see everyone? And I think about spaces where I'm extra diligent about showing up and seeing people. And I do that with, people in service positions. I do that when I'm at the grocery store. I do that when I'm on a bus, or when I'm in, environments where maybe I'm at the doctor's office or whatever, or my neighbors. I'm taking that effort to make more of a conscientious effort to make eye contact, to say good morning, to smile, to engage with people. And I think about some of the behaviors that we demonstrate, and sometimes we don't even realize that we're doing this when it comes especially to people that are in homeless positions, or people that are in a more poverty-stricken space where we think we know their story and we've labeled them a certain way. And we are dismissing them, we are diminishing them, and oftentimes it's in little ways simply by not making eye contact. And I think about times when I'm in my car and I come up to the intersection in a spot in Austin, and I think about things I do to distract myself, or things that I do that purposely keep me in my isolated bubble. And there was something really interesting about what the article said was sometimes we do it because we don't want to see the reality of what's going on. And I really sat in that for a minute. And like I said, good morning, Carol. This one's a really tough one for me this morning. And I'm just being really real. Because like I said, I think it's interesting when you have a conversation and when you're talking about certain things, how messages show up to either confirm and validate the space that you're trying to grow in and expand in, or be a mirror to hold up your own truth to say, you know what, how are you doing in that space? And I have to say personally, I feel like I'm not doing as well as I thought I was. And what's interesting is I was thinking back, and I remember one of the first Disney movies that was remade. And you know how they're remaking a lot of the cartoons so that there's actual, a movie now. And Cinderella was one of the very first ones. And what was interesting is if you watch that movie, because what I love about it is they bring in more of the depth of the story. And there's a space where, Cinderella is this is after her mother dies, and then her father dies, and she's with her stepmother and the stepsisters, and she's cleaning out the ashes in the chimney, and she's got soot all over her face. And one of the stepsisters calls her they call her Cinder something, and then they call her Cinderella, right? And the name becomes something that they label her with. And I remember that the words in the movie then said, there were some really fantastic quotes in that movie, and I'm really big on things that just resonate. And it said, names have power like magic spells. And I say that because I'm going to get into a couple other things that I heard. I love it's one of my favorite movies because there's some really powerful, I've watched it a few hundred times, and I've had to stop and play a couple times because there's some really powerful messages in there. And I think about the fact that that line hit me really hard when it was, names have power. They're like magic spells, because oftentimes when someone gives us that label, when they put us in that box, we start to believe and resonate with the meaning, with the definition of what that context, what that word, what that name has. And it's like a magic spell that's cast over us. And so think about this for a moment. We go throughout our day, and there's days that, yes, so true, assumptions are unconscious almost. I agree, Robin, especially in regards to people. Is it protection? I think there's a belief in us that it's protection. We think we're at harm's way. We think there's a space to be fearful. And truthfully, good morning. Cinderella, right? That's what they call her. Absolutely, because her name was Ella. Thank you, Herbie. Yes, that's exactly where that came from, right? Cinder, because of the cinders in the fireplace. And then Ella was her name. And it really, really dropped in. Good morning, Yvette. And so I want you to think about, we think it's for our protection. And so thinking about it, you're in your car and you look at a homeless person that's on the corner. Most of us are like, I don't want to make eye contact either, because, and sometimes it's subconscious, and we'll say something like, I don't want to see the reality of what's going on, or, oh my gosh, there's a real danger if I make eye contact. And the reality of it is that's nonsense. The reality of it is you're completely safe. There's nothing fearful in making eye contact and smiling at someone and seeing someone and honoring the fact that they are a human being, that they still have value regardless of their life circumstance. And oftentimes it's easy to judge, especially someone who's homeless, about how they ended up in that situation. And what we don't know is the story, right? Everybody has a story behind the surface. The A track is never the reality of what's going on, yet it's really easy for us sometimes to jump into a space where we make that assumption, we make that judgment. Herbie, the prescription that the label is the truth, right? Yes. And so that magic spell is created. And I think about how we show up in response to that. And like I said, this hit me really hard, because what started to hit me is we all have days. We have days we're distracted, we're in our phones way too much, our heads down. I mean, it's amazing to me how many times I walk around and people aren't making eye contact and here's the thing. Think about it, you were like, okay, it doesn't really harm. It's one person, I didn't make eye contact, so be it. Now think about if you were the person on the receiving end, where nobody's looking at you, where nobody's making eye contact with you, where every day, and this is where it gets really hard for me, where every day you're being ignored, you're being dismissed, you're being devalued, because 20 people walk by and nobody looks at you. 20 days go by and nobody looks at you. And you think about the fact of what that does for the human spirit. Ooh, told you this would be a hard one for me today. Because this is me sitting in my truth. This is me sitting in a space to say, how am I showing up as a leader when I'm not stepping up for all of humanity? And it's not as if it's my personal responsibility to go out and save the world. I understand that. And how many times have I allowed distraction? How many times have I allowed myself to not want to see the reality of what's going on? How many times have I turned a blind eye? How many times have I been one of those people that's compounding that effect where someone doesn't feel seen? And have you ever, and I know I've had aspects in my life where I wasn't seen. Do you know how powerful it is in a negative way? Do you know how diminishing, how demeaning, how invisible you feel when you truly aren't being seen by anybody around you, when you feel as if you're a ghost in humanity, when you feel like you don't know why you're here because no one seems to care. No one is connecting. And so I think about the power of connection. And like I said, this is extremely difficult for me today, because when I think about how many times I'm in my car and I'm like, I just don't want to engage right now. And I've made it all about me. And sometimes we need that. Sometimes we need to check out. I get that. I'm an empath and I bring energy to me. And sometimes it's really challenging to pull all that energy in. And when I allow myself to get out of my own space and I think about it from someone else's perspective, I think about how little it would take to offer somebody kindness, how little it would take to offer somebody a gesture of connection, of love, to say, I see you as a fellow human, a human. I see you as someone who's here living and breathing, and you know what, I don't know your circumstance, and I'm not going to let my judgment stop the fact that I see you and I can have compassion in that space. And regardless of what you think about the homeless issue, regardless of what your politics are, regardless of your religious beliefs, and regardless of all of it, I feel like some of that is such a cop-out for us. It's such a wall. It's such a space that people hide behind instead of getting really real and really honest with how you're showing up as a human being for fellow human beings. And like I said, this isn't a political discussion. This is a humanity discussion. And there is something really deeply powerful that resonated with me as I was reading this. And the thing is it was like, because the thing is, it's never one person. It's every person not seeing them every day. So imagine if your family didn't see you every day. Imagine if your neighbors didn't see you every day. Imagine if you were someone who every day was invisible to everyone around them. How would you feel? What would that do for your sense of self, your sense of being, your sense of purpose. And so again, we don't know, good morning, Mateo. We don't know what that does, right? And a smile is not something that we need to be afraid of. A eye contact, simply saying, hello, how are you? Whatever it might be, right? And I remember I was watching video where there was secret coverage. One of my most favorite actors is Keanu Reeves, and I love the way he gives back. He spends days in New York. First of all, he rides the subway. With everything he's got, he rides the subway every day. And he goes in and there's days that he spends an entire day with a homeless person, just conversing with them. And they've caught secret footage of him because it's not something he goes out and expresses. It's not something that needs. But I think about how little effort that takes and how much value that brings. And like I said, it's something for me personally that was like a sucker punch. It was like a wake-up call that said, I have work to do as a leader. I'm not being congruent and standing in a space that says I'm leading fully from love, with love, in my best capacity. And so I'm bringing this because I know many of you have a heart like mine. Many of you are wanting to create bigger influence. You're wanting to level up your game. You want to play a more responsible role as a leader in your life. And it starts with us really getting honest with where we're not showing up, not just where we are showing up. And for me, this one, like I said, hit me in my gut hard. Robin, oh, you're making me cry. Wasn't my intention this morning. I knew this one was going to be difficult for me. Part of the documentary I mentioned with my moving to the borderline of very low income on one side of me, $1 million mansions on the other side of me. And what I expected, this is not what truly has transpired. On a daily basis, I drive by a park where homeless people hang out, and I see the look on their faces, and every day I now pay it forward to one of those people in some way. I love that, Robin. Thank you for that. I can no longer walk by. I know I can't save everybody, but I can do something. Yeah, there's one of my favorite parables, and my mom used to laugh at me all the time because it really was one of my favorite parables. Was the one about the starfish. Have you guys ever heard the story about the starfish? It's the one where there's millions and millions of starfish that have washed up on the shore due to the tide. And there's an older gentleman who's out on the beach and he's throwing the starfish back in the water. And at some point, a young jogger comes by and he's watching the old man as he's throwing these starfish back in the ocean. And finally, he approaches the young man or the older man, and he says, "Sir, what are you doing?" And he says, "I'm saving the starfish." And the young runner chuckles and he looks and he's like, "Sir," he's like, "Dude, there's millions and millions of starfish. You're not going to save them all." And the older gentleman picks up one and throws it back in the water, and he said, "But I made a difference to that one." And I think about the power of that story. And I remember my mom always saying, she's like, "That story's so the epitome of you," right? And I think about, we don't have to save everybody. But imagine if you can make a difference, if you can make an impact for one. And Joel Manby, I've mentioned him before, the CEO of the Hersinger Family Entertainment Company, he has a quote that says, "Do for one that which you wish you could do for many." And imagine if every day, so here's our wonder space, right? We're back in Wednesday Wonder. It's the Imagine If, dancing in the possibilities. Imagine if we could do for one, if we could see one. And we wish we could see everybody, right? Imagine if you could make one person feel visible, if you could make one person feel seen, if you could reach out and share love and compassion and kindness and connection with a homeless person or someone else. Maybe it's somebody in the service industry. It's amazing to me how many people go through a line at Target or go through the restaurant and or their Starbucks line, and they never make eye contact with their server. I say everyone's name. I ask their name. I want to engage in conversation. Another thing I got made of as a kid because I wanted to know like their life story. My mom's like, "They're our server." I'm like, "No, they're a person. They just happen to be in a position to be serving us today." I think that's ridiculous, right? In fact, one of my measures, I tell all of my clients when they're hiring new people, I said, if you've got somebody that you're ready to make an offer on, you take them to go have coffee and see how they interact with the service people in that industry, because it's very telling about whether it's somebody you want on your team or not, in my opinion. I do that on dates. You know, I'm always like, I'm really clear. How you treat the service people and how you treat my dog is a really good indication of whether or not you're someone that I want to hold space with. And yet, like I said, this article really cut me to the core, and was like a sucker punch in a space that said, how can we be seen? And here's the thing. I absolutely agree, Terry. Everybody deserves respect until they treat me in a way that causes them to lose that right, which is pretty bad because I forgive fairly easily. I agree. And I want us to get really honest with ourselves, because we all have spaces where we're not showing up for people. And it is the reality. We have spaces where we have a story that says this is dangerous, or this is this, or we've made a label, or we've put a space in there. And so I'm urging everyone to lean into that space, that while sometimes intellectually we say, because sometimes this is subconscious behavior that and this is what hit me last night, because I, to my core, believe every human being has value. And yet when I allow myself to really dig into some of my subconscious behaviors, some of my unconscious ways I show up, I have to get really real and say, wow, I'm not walking that truth in every aspect of my life. And I have an opportunity to hold myself accountable and take responsibility for that and shift that and be more mindful and be more present. Don't be distracted, and allow myself to see and be seen, because there's a vulnerability in that, right? Brene Brown talks about that vulnerability of being seen. And there's this dichotomy we have that says, I really, really, really want people to see me. And then on the other side, we're like, God, I really, really, really hope people don't see me. And yet it's human nature to want to belong and be seen. And it's that space of belonging to something bigger than ourselves. I mean, we belong to ourselves first. And it's that space of belonging to humanity, belonging to a larger sense of something, right? And so while I intellectually and even in my heart and my soul, I believe that, I have to really get in and ask myself, are all my behaviors congruent in that space, or other spaces where I have an opportunity to be more present and show up differently? And so it's not hard to smile or nod or share a granola bar or hug with people we encounter through the day. Yes. And that's all people. Do we filter that? And I will tell you, with most people that I've talked to and had this conversation, even the most meaningful, even the most, present, there's usually a space where maybe we don't. And so my question is, where's that space of maybe you don't, right? And so, but I made a difference to that one, yes, right? I love this starfish story. Mateo, I've been homeless twice. Oh, thank you for sharing that. In both situations, even though I was owning 100% of my responsibilities, they were due to actions and situations out of my control. Before those situations occurred, we used to deliver food and clothes to people we would find in our neighborhoods. The most severe issues I faced were being rejected by Christian churches, with often responses of, you have a car and a job, how are you homeless? Or how can a white male with a job be homeless? For those that chose me as their starfish, the one they helped, I have given back 100-fold, made them wealthy, helped them break through all of their limits as they allowed me to coach them. And I love that, right? I've been bankrupt in my life before. I had family circumstances, a lot of things connected to my dad and things that happened. And very early in my 20s, I had a choice. I could carry a lot of family debt when my mom wasn't doing well, when she was forced to go bankrupt, when my dad didn't pay child support, things I was co-signed on, or I had to make a decision. I remember standing in front of the judge in Milwaukee. It was at 10 o'clock on August 7th. Never forget it. 2000 and what was it? No, it was 2003 or 2004. And I remember standing in the space where the attorney or the judge said, do you know what you're doing right now? And I said, yes, sir, I do. And I remember walking out and having a moment where it was two of the most opposing feelings that I was vacillating between. One was, oh my God, I've never had so much shame in my whole life, and I don't want anyone to know my deep, dark secret. And the other feeling I had in that space was, oh my God, I'm free. It's the first time I have no attachment to my father, and every decision I make moving forward is mine here on out. And I no longer have to be bound by what he created and how I got caught up in that, right? So Mateo, I truly truly deeply honor your vulnerability in sharing that. And that's the thing. I mean, and I know you well, and I would have never known that about you, right? We don't know what stories, what journeys, what things people are on. You look at someone like Joe Vitale, who was homeless for, and in poverty for 15 years in his life, and now he's one of the wealthiest, people out there creating impact. We all have a path, and it could be that someone lost a child and didn't know how to handle the bereavement, or someone got caught up in the wrong crowd and ended up having to, whatever the story is, it's not ours to judge. It's ours to be able to reach it and see people. And as Mateo said, find the ones that are the starfish. Find the ones that we get to help. Do for one that which we could do for many. And I think about the power of stories. I think about how for so long I didn't want people to know the abuse. I didn't want people to know the things that were going on in my house, because I thought by talking about it, it made me a victim. Well, all it did was further isolate me, and I allowed myself to be invisible in that. And there's so much pain that happens when you detach in that space, when you become invisible. And when we choose to see other people, we allow ourselves to be seen too. And so for some of you, the distraction or the I don't want to see them is because you don't want to be seen as well. And so you diminish yourself and thereby diminish those around you as well. And so it's only when we create that self-love for ourselves, our self-love for others, and we create that space that says, do for one that which we, hello, Lori, do for one that which we could do for money, right? Terry, also important to remember, sometimes senior executives or top high school athletes or stay-at-home parents are as much or more in need of human connection as homeless people are. Yeah, that's an excellent point. I had one of my CEOs who said, Candy, I feel like I pay you to be my sounding board. I don't have a safe space to talk about my struggles, my pain. People see somebody that's performing based on society standards, and they're like, oh, they got their shit together, they're a superhero, when they don't know the story that's running underneath. They don't know some of the, and this was my space, right? I was kicking ass in corporate. I was taking names. I was climbing the corporate ladder like a crazy person. And especially when I hit rock bottom when I was at GE, I was doing all kinds of self-deprecating things, whether it was emotional binge eating or excessive drinking or sleeping around or working out too hard or indulging in, shopping or this or that. I mean, I joke sometimes, it's not really a joke, that said I did everything that was an addictive, compulsive, taking the edge off behavior aside from hardcore drugs at a period of my life. And I mean, the article that was done on me that CNN did a couple years back, the very first line says, Candy Barone has very little recollection of her late 20s. I put myself in a numb fog because I want to deal with all the stuff that was happening in my life. And yet on the outside, it looked like I was performing. I was working 80 to 100 hours a week. I was crushing it, and I was killing myself, and I was isolated, and I would go home every night and I would cry, and I would crawl into bed exhausted if I did crawl into bed. And the thing is sometimes what we see on the outside, that A track is not. And I think about one of the other quotes that was in the Cinderella was when she's walking downstairs after, she has to go face the prince as Cinderella, right? And she gets to try on the shoe, which, she was walking down the stairs and she looks in the mirror, and the comment is, but who she was really was be enough? There's no magic to help her this time. This is perhaps the greatest risk that any of us will ever take, to be seen as we truly are. And I think about that vulnerability to be seen in our pain, to be seen in our story, to be seen in our success, to be seen in whatever season we're in our life, and how risky that is. That's wide open space, right? And so don't always assume that what you see is what's going on behind the scenes. I was a master at the mask. And there's so many people that had no idea what was going on behind the scenes. And I think about, as I hear Mateo's story, Terry, as you talk about, watch those people that we think are crushing it by whatever standards that's out there. We have an opportunity to look deeper, right? And it's only when we choose to see people, when we make eye contact, when we connect, when we open ourselves up and we stand in a place to say, I see you and I allow you to see me, that we can create this amazing opportunity for healing that is so needed in the world right now. Terry, while as replying to Mateo, while those are probably honest questions from people who are truly perplexed, I'm so sorry you were hurt by the people in the Christian churches. No one is perfect, but as Christians, we should know we're imperfect and strive to do better than kick people down. And so, yes, I agree. And I do think sometimes people hide behind religion. I think they hide behind, a space where, they hide behind their political stance. They hide behind their religious stance. They hide behind. And the thing is it has nothing to do with whether you're a Christian or a Buddha or a Jewish person or this. We all as human beings have an opportunity and a responsibility to show up and care for our fellow brothers and sisters from a deeper place of compassion and kindness. And so oftentimes, and I personally have found and have had experience in the judgment that comes along, and there's a lot of judgment when we use those labels, because again, that's a label, a space where we can hide and we can put it up as a barrier. And so I urge us to be more mindful around where there is constriction, where there is restriction, where there are judgments and questions that maybe aren't the questions that allow people to feel open and seen, but actually are shutting people down and make them feel judged. And so there's an opportunity of how we're showing up right now. And I'm saying this because I really am sitting in my own shit this morning, everybody. As you can see, this is really real for me. I'm not self-deprecating. I'm opening up a space to get honest with myself and reflect on how I've been showing up in spaces where I don't feel like I've been so congruent, and my opportunity to step up and lead differently, and how I'm going to take the measures to make that declaration and commit to showing up from a better place, to see more people around me and to open up access. In fact, last night I even saw one of my new neighbors, which a lot of my neighbors I don't even want to participate with. I've got a lot of neighbors I'm not real happy with in my neighborhood, and I'm missing the opportunities to connect. And so this has just really opened up a huge space to get honest, to get real, and to make sure I'm not hiding behind any of my labels or frames or beliefs or programmings or anything from there. Yvette, not proud of it, but about 2 weeks ago, I chose not to see someone. I was in my car and he was on the corner asking for money, and it was inconvenient for me at the moment. I could have done better. Yeah, that's what hit me last night, Yvette. I feel the same way. I feel like there's times I'm like, oh, I'm just going to check my email while I'm sitting at the light. Oh, I'm just going to do something else and change the radio station, whatever it is. And I find a way that I'm like, I don't want to engage right now. I don't want to engage in the situation. And so thank you for your honesty in that space. And again, this isn't for us to sit here and shame ourselves. It's not a space for us to self-deprecate. It's for us to get really honest. What's the kind of leader you choose to be? And what does that require for you to step a little more out of your stepping out of your comfortable zone, right? Allowing yourself to be more vulnerable, to be more open, to make yourself be seen so that you can see others. And so it's the question that I'm simply putting out there. Good morning, Martha. Robin, most of the homeless people I've met are not there in that position because of reasons you would normally assume. Yes, that's so true. And in all honesty, most of them are just like you and me and Mateo. Circumstances hit people, and not everyone has a safety net. Absolutely. Carol, last week I shared my B-side story with an online forum. Suffering with autoimmune disease while being in the health coaching field can be a place of shame to show up, or bravery. I choose bravery. I love that, because our B track it's the space where we can connect. And it was amazing to me at Rise. One of the moments that probably hit me to my core. And it's another thing that really I've been processing. And first of all, Robin, I'm taking orange and bananas to the park. Shortly compliments of Candy's Coffee Chat. Oh, I love that. I love that so much. And one of the activities that Rachel Hollis did at the Rise event was called Stand Up for Your Sister. And we had a checklist because we think we're isolated when we're in our shame storm, right? We think no one's gone through what we've gone through. And even in the conversation we're having here, we're finding so much commonalities in our journey and our path. This is creating connection. And there was a list of statements it was in your workbook, and she made it very clear that you're not writing your name on this. This is going to be completely anonymous, and it's going to move through the room. And so she shared it, right? And it was things like, I've used food as a tool to deal with my emotions. I've, slept with someone and wasn't in love with them to feel loved. I mean, it was all these things that are the shame questions, right? It's every kind of question. I've used alcohol to numb my pain. I've lost a child. I've lost a parent. So it's all these various things that are traumas or shames, and it was an entire checklist. I guarantee there's 7,500 people, 7,400 people, what do you want to say? Huge, one of the largest events. It was like a Tony Robbins event, except it was being held by Rachel Hollis. 7,400 people in the room. I guarantee that somebody checked something, everybody, right? And so what happened was then we were checking all these things, and I think out of the entire list of like 40, I didn't check 7. Truth moment right there for sure, right? And then what you did is you folded it up and you just kept passing. You just kept passing it to someone else and someone else, and at some point you lost track of where your paper went, which was the whole point. And then what happened was you opened the paper in front of you, and every time she read one of the things on the list, you stood up for the person. Because as she said, she goes, I don't know how many of you would have had the courage to stand up for yourself, so this is your opportunity to stand up for your sister. And here's the experience I had when the paper fell into my lap, when it all went around. I opened the paper and I started bawling. And my friend Tanisha was sitting next to me, and she's like, what's wrong? And I showed her my checklist that I had received, and it was blank. And she said, oh God, because I guarantee with the questions that were on that list, every single person has gone through something on that list. It's impossible as a human being. It's an impossible. And so even in an anonymous way where there was absolutely nothing that would be brought back to you, there was someone who was hurting so much. There's someone who was feeling invisible that they couldn't even check anything on that list. And Tanisha's like, I would imagine as a coach, that's killing you right now. And I said, I hurt so much for that person, because I mean, kudos that if no one has experienced that, but I really will tell you with the questions on there. And some of them were past tense, some of them were present. I mean, it had things like, I hate my body on there. At some point, at any point. And I just felt this heaviness. And so what's interesting is I had this immediate need to want to protect this person, to want to not put them in a shame storm, because I knew that when the questions were up, every single person in that auditorium was going to raise, and I didn't want to be the one person that didn't stand up at all, because that person would know I had their sheet. And so Tanisha and I looked at each other. She goes, I'm going to take a couple on my list, and then you're going to take a couple. And we kept swapping papers because we wanted to honor someone who couldn't honor themselves. And I think about that. I think about the fact that someone had so much fear, so much shame, so much vulnerability that they were unwilling to step into, that even in a moment where they were allowing someone else that in an anonymous manner to stand up for things they've experienced in their life, they couldn't allow themselves to go there. And for me, that broke my heart. And I know some of you might think that's crazy. It broke my heart in that moment. And so Tanisha and I made a decision that we were going to share responsibility and combine the two papers together so that we could both stand and this person would not feel any more shame, because I guarantee there wasn't a question that almost the entire room didn't stand at a given point. And it was one of the most powerful things I've ever witnessed, and one of the most healing, because when we were done, everybody took their papers and they threw them forward, and there was this kind of moment of silence where you held your neighbor's hand and you just stood and honored the fact that we all have a story, that we all have space where we felt invisible, where we all need human connection, and that people were going through things even in that moment, right? There's been this incredible Facebook community that's developed with 7,400 people continuing to stay in this conversation and lift each other up and support each other. And I think about the power of the B track. So Carol, I love that. The B track is where we get to connect, right? And so the last thing I want to read you from the Cinderella movie, because I love it, was when Ella's mom was dying. She said something to Ella that, oh my God, I just absolutely love. And it was, she said to her, she's like, I want to tell you a secret, a great secret that will see you through all the trials life will have to offer. You must always remember this. Have courage and be kind. For you have more kindness in your little finger than most people possess in their whole body. And it has power, more than you know, and magic. Truly, have courage and be kind, my darling. And that was the last word she spoke to Ella when she was on her deathbed. And I just think about that. Have courage and be kind. It takes courage to see somebody who's a little broken, to see somebody who's hurting, to see somebody who life circumstances has said they're a little down and out. It takes courage to allow yourself to be seen and let people in on the B track. And we all need more kindness. We all need more love. And so, again, like I said, I knew this morning was going to be a tough one for me, but it felt, and let me change it, and cancel clear. It felt important to share that because this is part of my B track. This is part of the space where I don't get it right every time. And I take responsibility for that, and I take ownership of that. And today is a new day, and I choose and declare to show up differently with more courage and more kindness in every facet of my life. And so I hope that you will do the same. Yvette, I can only imagine how powerful a situation that was, right? And Deborah, that's wild. I met a friend that attended Rise last night. She talked about that exercise. Yeah, that exercise changed my life. It absolutely changed my life. And it was so powerful to see the effect of, because some of those questions you're like, no one else has gone through this. And when you watch an entire auditorium of 7,000 plus people stand, there wasn't a dry eye in that place. And there was a lot of healing that took place, right? And so today, this moment is a new moment to show up purposely, powerfully, and passionately and step into the next level of what leadership looks like and means for you. And so I thank you all for being here today and engaging in the conversation and allowing me to be open and vulnerable and share a little bit of the B track today. Because this is tough. It's tough to sit in a space and recognize where you haven't been your strongest, right? Where there's some weakness, where there's opportunity, and where I've missed those moments of connection. And so I choose something different today, and I hope and urge and invite all of you to take some self-inventory, to do some reflection, and to see where you too can step up in a space to see people differently, to be purposeful about making those deep, real connections, and to allow yourself to be seen in the process. So Robin, thank you. I love all of you and truly honor the stories you've shared, the vulnerability. Mateo, Carol, Robin, Terry, thank you so much, all of you. Yvette, everybody, those of you I didn't even name that are here every day, Deborah, Martha, Shirley, all of you, thank you for your stories. Thank you for leaning in together. We are helping that space of healing and connection here. And now it's our opportunity and responsibility to carry that out. So today I want you to imagine if you allowed yourself to see more. And that includes yourself in the process. And so I love you, everyone. We will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm actually going to talk about why I love the haters so much. So we're going to shift frames a little bit, right? Because I need a little bit lighter space. But anyway, I love every one of you. Thank you so much. Go out and make it a powerful day. And let's see, what's Terry saying here at the end? At the risk of outing myself to my current coach, admitting my own fears and pains, the real deep ones, to a coach is so hard. I'm striving to grow. I'm striving to be courageous and positive. I'm striving to be my whole self. I coach teens and parents to do the same. And yet I'm terrified by the potential failure. Again, the real deep kind that seems only one step in front of me as I'm starting in this business. What a fraud. Ooh. We're going to have a whole conversation about that, the imposter syndrome, and what a human I am. Time for me to admit my fears and imperfections so I can adjust them, fix them, or learn to accept them and move on. Yes, In Yada Haters, yes. And Terry, first of all, thank you. That is extremely open and vulnerable for you to put out there. And sometimes it's not so we have to fix them. It's so that we can share them and use them as a way for other people to connect. It's one of the reasons why when I go through things, and I know many of you say, man, Candy, you are sharing like you don't mess around when you say when you're going through it, you bring it to us. Because I know that if it's something that I'm tripping on, if it's something that's that sucker punch, if it's something that's causing this kind of expression of emotion and pain for me, then I have to know that someone else is going through it too. And it makes it real when you can walk people through an experience that you're sharing with them, that you can help them see from a different perspective. And so Terry, know that all of that, know that that fear, know that that space that feels like it's scary, know that that space that is bubbling around you is all of that deep space that you can create for additional connection, because that's how people feel your genuine authenticity. It's how people feel the realness of your message. And I know that because I can feel all of you through this conversation, and you're showing up powerfully because I chose to show up today and share this with you. And so together we create the healing. Together we can fix, if there's even a fix, or see what's broken and allow ourselves to be those Japanese bowls, right, where we put the gold inside and we create something else that's even more beautiful and has greater strength. And it's not necessarily about fixing, it's about elevating, it's about lifting. And we all have been called to step into our purpose in some capacity, and some of that purpose is being able to be vulnerable and real in whatever you're going through right now, and not in a way to play victim, but in a way to uplift and heal and connect with others. So Terry, thank you for that story. Mateo, again, thank you for sharing your story. Carol, all of you, just such deep gratitude. And I hope you'll continue to reach out and connect with each other outside the space. Until tomorrow, just know that you all are in my heart. I see you. I see all of you, and I hope you'll allow yourself to continue to be seen today. So with that, go out, do for one that which you wish you could do for many, and I will catch up with everyone tomorrow morning. I love you so much. Bye.